Facilities that make this program possible are provided by the City of Highland Park. Programs are produced independently by members of the community. The City of Highland Park is not affiliated with the following program or the producers of public access programming and is not responsible for the content. The following program does not reflect the opinions of the City of Highland Park.
Welcome to Chill Out. I'm Pam Chill. I'm one of the Highland Park senior producers, and today's program is a very interesting topic, very timely topic. It's about from entitlement to intention, raising purpose-driven children. I'm honored today to have as my guest Dr. Elizabeth Lombardo. Welcome to the program.
Thank you for having me.
And I'll give a little brief bio on you. You may have seen, you've been on the Today Show, Good Morning America, Dr. Oz, all my favorite programs. And you're known as the celebrity psychologist. You live on the North Shore, and we're going to discuss your recent book, which is From Entitlement to Intention, which I'm going to showcase here. It's a very nice, I think it was like a 121-page book.
It's a quick read.
Very quick read, concise, to the point, done very well. You know, as far as question, answers, from a parent's standpoint, actually it could be a parent and it could be a child, you know, or an adult child or a millennial reading this just to see where they would stand.
Sure.
So I found that very interesting, raising purpose-driven children. Again, welcome, Dr. Lombardo.
It's great to be here.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you. So let's discuss, why is this a timely subject right now?
Yeah, so entitlement is huge right now. I mean, an entire generation is associated with it, but it's not just the millennials. It's something that really is impacting so many people, and a lot of times we're not even aware of it. Entitlement is really that notion that I deserve special privileges because of who I am. And not only I deserve, but I expect them. And the problem with that mindset that a lot of times we see in families with wealth, but we also see other places too, is entitlement. I say entitlement is the best way to be miserable for yourself and all of those around you. Entitlement really is this notion of I deserve these special gifts, and with that comes a sense of people around me should bow down to me. The rules don't apply to me. And you really can never experience true happiness within yourself if you're basing your worth on how other people react to you.
Now, what are the advantages that they do have as opposed to people who don't have the background, the education, or, you know, being, I look at it as being like when you go to college, if you're in debt and not in debt, too. I thought about that, too, when I read some, you know, little excerpts of the book, that is it better to let them pay for college, you know, as far as their scholarship, or let them put everything in their name and you just send the minimum? So I also thought of that as...
That's an interesting question. So I have a saying, just because you can doesn't mean you should. Just because you can have someone clean your house and take care of your landscape doesn't mean you should have someone do that as opposed to your children. One of the things that we're missing out on, I think, as we're raising what we want to have, which is purpose-driven children as opposed to entitled children, is this notion of responsibility. And when you look at, for example, paying for college, there's no right or wrong answer to that. What you want to do is help your children instill a sense of responsibility, instill a sense of gratitude and appreciation for this gift. And I have some clients who, you know, certainly could afford to send their children to college, no problem, and yet they have their children, for example, pay 10%, so that they have some skin in the game, so that as they're attending classes, they have a different appreciation for being there, and really a responsibility of not just I'm here to party, but you know what, I have to help pay for this too, so I want to make sure I'm getting the most out of it.
No, I agree with you. absolutely wholeheartedly that if you have something into it, if you have a part-time job that you're going to and you're 16 hours a week or whatever it may be, and going to college, then you will take it much more seriously.
Certainly for some people. For other
Yes.
people, they don't necessarily need that, and that's fine too. I also have a client whose children are in school and their children don't work, but they volunteer. And so they see that
excellent.
volunteer work is kind of paying their dues for then
Absolutely.
getting their tuition taken care of.
Absolutely.
So, yeah.
So is wealth a bad thing?
Well, there's a lot of research that shows that children from wealthy families are actually at increased risk for psychological issues like depression and anxiety and substance abuse and eating disorders and unfortunately even suicide. So whereas someone from the outside might say, oh, a rich kid has no problems at all, there's actually a lot of psychological issues that can arise. And that's one of the reasons why I wrote this book, was to really help this group of people realize how can we raise children who are happy, who are purpose-driven, even amongst all of this wealth that they have. But it's not money per se that's bad. There's a mediating variable. There's something that gets in the way of that wealth that really changes and causes these issues that we're finding. And that mediating factor is entitlement. It's that notion of, I deserve this because of who I am. Now,
What is entitlement, when we're going back to it, but how does that differ from just being self-confident?
Yes, that's so important, because a lot of times we try to instill confidence in our children, and yet unfortunately what we're doing is we're instilling entitlement. When we look at true confidence, and really I use a term called unconditional self-worth. It's a little bit deeper than confidence. We all know people who are confident who are kind of jerks, right? That's not what we're trying to do.
They do well in life.
Well, and it's really a different types of confidence.
They go up the ladder.
Yeah,
right.
yeah. So what we want them to do is to have a sense of confidence that's really based on who they are in their core, as opposed to entitlement, which is, I deserve this. And the problem with having that notion of I deserve these special privileges is when children and adults have entitlement, they constantly expect everyone else to be bowing down to them. They constantly expect the rules to be broken for them. And when they don't get those privileges, their self-worth is really attacked. And we know this to be true because we've heard about celebrities who have fits for not being able to smoke on an airplane or something like that, because that's the entitlement. And the problem with entitlement is when people don't get the privileges that they think that they expect, it really hurts their core, their self-worth, and that's when angry outbursts can occur.
So the self-worth and belief, see, how do you really, when you raise a child, you want them to feel so confident and then they are special, and, and forget about that it's really a cruel world out there. I know when I just, saying when I raised my daughter, I was like, oh, you can do this, you can do that, you can do that, and you can do this, and then, and then you get a counselor saying, well, based on your test scores, maybe you should think of cosmetology school. And I went off on this, counselor. I said, how can you say that? My daughter wants to be a physician. She wants to be an attorney, whatever. Mm-hmm. But, you're just kind of like streamlining her into one category.
Yes.
So you want to make them confident,
right? But
it's like, where does reality set in?
Well, where does reality set in? And then also that component of what does special mean? Now, a lot of times as parents, I have 2 children, and we tell our kids they're special, but what do they hear? Do they hear I'm special and really every individual is special? Or do they hear I'm special and I'm better than you? And that's the distinction we want to make. We don't want our children to feel like I'm better than you, which is why I'm special, but more I'm special because I'm a unique individual. And I have my own unique strengths and core values, and that's what makes me special. And in terms of really helping our children flourish, we want to encourage our children to do what is purpose-driven and passionate for them. So we don't want to put them in a hole of, this is what you should be doing. We may offer that according to what the tests may say, but reminding your child, I tell my kids and I tell my clients, there's a reason why you have that interest. There's a reason why you have that passion within you, and you need to pursue that.
Mm-hmm. And then a lot of children growing up, they're just too pressured, between a lot of outside activities and sports and friends, and they may be just that mediocre student going through elementary school and high school, and then college, they suddenly go, I have to really take this seriously.
Yes.
And they do much better.
Yes.
They could do better, they can do worse, depending on what it is.
Yeah, we put a lot of pressure on our children, especially as they get into high school. I will say in my private practice, I'm amazed at how many adolescents come in dealing with stress and anxiety. And parents don't do it, certainly they don't do it on purpose, right? And they don't even realize that they're putting this pressure on them. But there becomes this sense of, and I think especially around where we live, I have to go to a great school in order to be successful, in order to make money, in order to do whatever it is that I'm supposed to do. And so the 9th, 10th, 11th, 12th graders, they're putting all this pressure on themselves. And that anxiety and stress is really negatively impacting not only their academic performance, but also their physical health. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So how can, as parents,
what do we do?
What do we do?
Yes. How can we motivate them and inspire them to be successful, but not go to that extreme and cause this anxiety? And again, the rates of anxiety are just going up and up and up. So what can we do? Well, modeling is really key. How do you, as a parent, deal with stress? How do you deal with pressure? Because even though we think our children aren't really looking at us, they're watching everything that we do. And they will absorb more what we
like
do.
Like sponges, they're absorbing everything.
Yes, but they will absorb more what we do than what we say. And so how do you deal with stress? How do you deal with pressure? What kinds of things do you say to yourself? Oh, I have to do this. It's so important that I do this. I'm just going to stay up all night to do it. Or is it, hey, you know what? I'm going to do my best. And if I don't get 100%, if I don't, achieve my goal, I'm going to learn from it and move on.
Mm-hmm. You talked about in your book conditional self-worth and unconditional self-worth. Can you elaborate a little bit about that?
Yeah, and I really find this, after working with clients for over 20 years, I find that this is the key to really any kind of success and happiness in our lives. In general, our society tends to be very conditional self-worth. I believe in myself if. I believe in myself if. I believe in myself if I look a certain way. I believe in myself if people around me agree with me. Our adolescents today, I believe in myself if I get a certain number of likes on social media. I believe in myself if. And the reason why this causes a lot of problems is because with these conditions of how you view yourself, you're constantly scanning the environment. You're figuring out how other people are reacting to you to determine your own self-worth. Now, how you view yourself has a direct impact on every single interaction that we have in this world. And so what we want to do is to move from conditional self-worth, I have to be better than you to feel better about myself. Conditional self-worth also comes with bullying, which we know is just happening at astronomical rates. Putting down someone else to feel better about yourself, that's conditional self-worth. And that leads to things like depression. It leads to things like anxiety. It leads to things, unfortunately, like suicide.
Yes, absolutely. I do when you touched on bullying, there is also, which I think has come to focusing on to light, it's not bullying, but just not kind of like ostracizing, kids. Yes. You're not saying anything bad against them, but you're not inviting them to the parties. Yes. So I think that, again, can be, just going back to it, very, very hurtful. Why can't they be included?
And it goes to that person's conditional self-worth, right? If I invite them in, then maybe other people won't see me as cool, so I'm not going to do that.
That's right. Yeah. Right.
And I truly believe that this conditional self-worth is at just epidemic rates, and we're not addressing it. The longer someone spends on Facebook, the more likely they are to be depressed. And the reason, I believe, is from conditional self-worth. Look how perfect her life is. Mine isn't as good as hers. Conditional self-worth, we compare ourselves to others. If I feel like my life isn't as good, I don't look as pretty, my vacations aren't as great, then I'm going to feel worse about myself. Mm-hmm. And that's in sharp contrast to what I call unconditional self-worth. Unconditional self-worth means you believe in yourself regardless. Not in a narcissistic, I'm better than everyone else, that's very conditional. But unconditional self-worth means I believe in myself because of who I am. My values, my strengths, my core of who I am. And when people react to me in a not kind way, I don't personalize that. It's not because I'm worthless that they're doing that. I may view it as, oh, they're having a bad day, or, oh, they don't like me, but that doesn't make me worthless. And when we have unconditional self-worth, that's when we can get rid of that entitlement. I don't have to be better than anyone else, and we can just be comfortable in our own skin.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So what about material possessions? So I wanted to just touch on that.
Yeah.
Is that a lifelong journey of material possessions? And when you start out as a child, and then you're going on and on and on, it's designer clothing, designer handbags for women, it's a brand new car,
Yes.
it's a sports car, it's going to a top 10 school. When does it stop?
Yeah.
And why do we need all of this?
And again, it goes back to that conditional self-worth. I feel good about myself if I have all the latest trends and designers, if I have that purse. And that's different from feeling good about yourself and liking that. I just like this purse, but I don't feel better because I have it.
Right.
I'm not going to make sure other people see it so I feel better about myself. So it's not so much there's anything wrong with material possessions, it's how do you view them? And does it tie into your worth? I had a client who was I grew up in Connecticut, and so I was talking to this woman, and we were doing some work together, and she was telling me how she and her husband had just purchased a new plane, which was lovely, and her neighbor who had purchased a new plane just a couple of months earlier was jealous of my client's plane and now was going to buy another plane. These are adults we're talking about here. But again, that conditional self-worth. I need more, I need better, I need to be better than everyone else, as opposed to just, how blessed I am to have a plane. How grateful I am to have this plane. And one of the ways to overcome this entitlement that we've been talking about is to really focus on gratitude. Again, there's nothing wrong with wealth. There's nothing wrong with beautiful homes and beautiful cars and wonderful vacations. The pivotal point is it entitlement? I deserve this. Of course I get it. Or is it gratitude? Wow, how great is this? And that's really that mindset difference is so key.
So how do we initiate that? How can that be the focal point on obviously children who have that?
Yes.
And then those children become millennials, and then they have children.
So
the cycle just keeps going on and on and on. Yeah. And do you think that they also, look at their parents and look at what they will get, essentially, like in their will? Because I thought of that too a lot when I see that, when I read parts of your book. It's like, yes, I'm going to be nice to Daddy or Mom because there's
Grandma.
And Grandma. I mean, what's the truth? What's the real love? And what's how much inheritance am I getting?
Yeah. And it really that's determined on how you raise your children. So to go back to how can we instill gratitude in our children, I'm going to go back to what I said to you: modeling. Where are you expressing gratitude? And not only for your life and what's going on, but the people around you. Maybe it's your house staff or people who are serving you or whatever. How are you showing gratitude for the experiences and the people around? Your partner, your children. When my children help do something around the house, I'll make sure I thank them. Is it part of their job? Yeah, because that's what I try to instill in my children, is a sense of responsibility. And when they do that, I'm going to express gratitude. So as a parent, how are you sharing gratitude? Not just when you're talking to your child to say thank you when you get a gift, but really expressing gratitude and living a place for gratitude. Not only when your children are watching, but when they're not watching. Because here's the thing, when they're not watching, they're still watching.
I think a lot of parents forget that,
Yes.
that they really are. And that they take in, like you said, everything that you express and how you treat people and how you interact. So looking back on it with kids, what kind of wealth are we talking about too? Because everybody has a different level. I think some people are assuming it's a tremendous amount of wealth, and it may not be.
In terms of what we're talking about here with these statistics,
right?
It's not 10 million up. It's a significant amount of wealth.
So the percentile of, like, you're probably in the 10 percentile of income that the parents you're talking about.
Yeah, and I would say the majority of people in the North Shore area meet that criteria, which is why,
because your average home is going to be somewhere like between $600,000 to $800,000 is your average home.
Yeah, and so that's where we're really finding these high statistics of depression and anxiety, and we aren't necessarily treating it for these kids. And what we need to remember is, as our children are growing up, if they're struggling with these psychological issues, it's so important to get them treatment. These are very
That's imperative.
treatable. They're very amenable to certain types of therapy. And when your children learn the skills of how to, I say, from entitlement to intention, how to go from how is the world here to serve me to how am I here to serve the world. And when we can teach our children these concepts of gratitude and stress management and unconditional self-worth, then those are skills that they'll have for the rest of their lives. Not only that they can pass on to their children when they have children, but as they're interacting with their friends and their classmates and down the road their colleagues. Because even though we absorb most when we're children, when we see other people interacting, we can model their behavior too. So even as adults, these individuals can be wonderful role models for them, other people around them.
Do you think it would be advantageous to work with find out which charity or what they're involved in, do something like that? I know there used to be like a Big Brothers, Big Sisters to some people, just to work with people who don't have exactly mentoring of what you have.
Yeah, I highly recommend for most of my clients that we find a nonprofit organization that they're passionate about.
Absolutely.
And
if it's music, maybe you can teach at a certain level or
children
inspire,
or animals, whatever it is. Really finding a group who is not
niche,
is not maybe doesn't have the advantages that you and your family have, and going out and interacting. So donating money is lovely, but something even deeper, interacting with these individuals. A lot of times we don't know what we don't know, and so growing up around here, you kind of see everyone is kind of the same, and so realizing, wow, this is a real small nugget of the world of what's really out there. So opening your eyes to other experiences, and that can also help our own sense of gratitude.
Absolutely,
Yeah.
Right, because you only see one side of it,
Yeah,
right,
yeah.
and the North Shore is a different side.
And
of
we
it.
know that when we help out other people, everyone wins. Right, the person receiving the help, the person giving the assistance, it's truly therapeutic. So, as a family, as an individual, going out and reaching on the community, it's a wonderful. I always say it's free therapy, right? It's a really wonderful thing to do, and it's a great thing to do as a family, and make it part of who your family is. Maybe it's a tradition around the holidays, or for the summertime. My daughters and I, at least once a week, we're going out and doing something together to help out other people.
No, that's great. You also mentioned we're doing lead quizzes.
Oh, yes.
Yes.
So I have a quiz. It's called Do You Have ICS.com. ICS.
Okay, and what is that?
ICS stands for Inner Critic Syndrome.
Okay.
Inner critic syndrome is when your mind is just beating yourself up. And I have found, first of all, that everyone has an inner critic. Right, even the biggest celebrities, the most beautiful people on this earth, everyone has an inner critic, and a lot of people don't realize that. But our inner critic actually has different dialects. There are different ways that it speaks. And so I'll just give a question and then to kind of give an example. Okay, so the question is, you're about to give an important presentation, and you're feeling a little nervous. If you could stick a microphone in your head, what would we hear you say? So A is, there's no way I'm taking questions from the stage. I might not have the right answers.
That sounds like our president.
Okay, yeah. And I'll tell you what each one of these represents afterwards. B is, what if I mess up? I'll get fired. C is, I better not botch this up like last time. And D is, I cannot mess this up. It needs to be flawless. So which one of those might describe you?
I would say probably B.
B, okay. What if I mess up? I'll get fired. Okay.
Right.
A, there's no way I'm taking questions from the stage. I might not have the answers. That correlates with imposter syndrome. Imposter syndrome is where I think I'm in way over my head and people are going to figure it out. And about 80% of the population experiences imposter syndrome.
Oh, really?
People who have imposter syndrome often think they're the only ones. They're not the only ones. And the higher up you go in the corporate ladder, in terms of success or newness, like new moms, the more imposter syndrome we see. So that's imposter syndrome. B, what if I mess up? I'll get fired. That's the worrier. What if?
What? That's me. That's me.
Yeah. Okay. I better not botch this up like last time. That's regret orientation. Shoulda, woulda, coulda, right? That's the person who replays over and over that mistake that they made. I call this pressing on a bruise. You ever press on a bruise?
Yes.
Yeah, it doesn't feel good.
No, it doesn't.
But when we ruminate, when we replay those negative events, that's that inner critic of regret orientation. And then D, I cannot mess this up. It needs to be flawless. That's the perfectionist. the all or nothing thinking. It's got to be perfect or it's a failure.
Probably organizational, tendencies.
Sometimes. So a lot of people think a perfectionist is someone who has a neat junk drawer, but it's actually much deeper than that. It's an all or nothing mentality. It's perfect or it's a failure. It's right or it's wrong. It's my way or it's wrong. And a perfectionist tends to take it one step further. So it's either perfect or it's a failure. And then a perfectionist says, if it's a failure, then I'm a failure. It goes to that conditional self-worth. I'm only okay if everything's perfect. And so those 4 types of inner critic syndrome impact not only what we say to ourselves, but how we interact with the world.
Oh, that does sound like me, because, I work for major corporations, and there's always a fear that you're going to get fired. So you have to, maintain this or do exactly what you're told and do a good job as best as to your ability.
Sure.
So that is true. So if you can say, what is the key? I mean, obviously it would be great if people can read, from entitlement to intention. But what would be like the few things, 1 or 2 things that really they can change?
Yeah. So when we're talking about parenting, again, it goes back to be the parent who you want your child to be. Right? When you're interacting with other people, how are you speaking to them? Where are you in terms of forgiveness? Such a huge gift to give to your children, to model forgiveness. And then how can you as a family grow closer? There's so many things pulling our children away from us, social media and friends, but where are some times when you can really spend some time together? Maybe it's volunteering, maybe it's sitting down at the dinner table. I developed some cards. A lot of my clients will say, I don't know what to talk to my kids about. They don't want to have a conversation. So they're actually cards of things that you can be talking about. What was the high point of your day today? What's something that you're grateful for? What's something that you admire in the person to your left? And so you can have these conversations, and what it does is it's really pulling out the values that are important to you. Without saying, you should be grateful or you should have integrity, you're really pulling out those values in a way that it's going to stick with them. And when you ask those kinds of questions and you have those conversations, what I find with my children is then they have those conversations with their friends.
Oh, that is quite interesting. Do you think it affects women more than men? Inner
critic syndrome? In general, everyone has an inner critic. It's different dialects. I find more for men, it tends to be more the imposter syndrome. And some of the
what is that like? They know that I slept through all my classes and I still got a degree or something.
I'm at a certain level at work, and they're gonna figure it out that I'm not actually this good. And the higher people go on the corporate ladder, the more we see it.
Oh, really?
Yeah, but we all have an inner critic. The goal isn't to get rid of your inner critic. The goal is to control your inner critic.
Okay, but you still have to have, even in the professional world, you have to have a degree of self-esteem. Because if you're trying to be a vice president, CEO of a corporation, you're not going to be the guy sitting in the corner with a little lunchbox. It's going to be you're networking all the time.
Right.
People are looking up to you. You've plateaued and you keep going from job and CEO and because I thought of that too when I was reading your book, because these are the people who become that.
Yeah, and I find even with extremely successful people on the outside, those who have confidence, again, it's a lot of times it's very conditional. Oprah used to talk about how as soon as the cameras went off, regardless of who it was, the biggest superstars in the world, they all asked the same question: how did I do? Did I do okay? Because they were concerned about it. And so we all second guess ourselves. And even people who ostensibly have a lot of confidence, a lot of times it's that certain conditions. I feel good about myself if I have this title. I feel good about myself if I look a certain way. I feel good about myself if everyone around me agrees with me. But that conditional self-worth is really, it's very stressful. It's very stressful.
Absolutely. Well, this has been a wonderful half hour, so informative.
Thank you.
You've answered so many questions and then raised so many questions at the same time. It's just that, so you have your practice. I just want to, do a little bit more about you. You have your practice that you're doing, which is in Lake Forest.
Yeah, so I have a practice in Lake Forest, and I work with a lot of families throughout the country. Via Skype, I travel to them, but really helping, because this is such a specific niche. I've had so many clients say, I've gone to talk to psychologists before, I've worked with coaches, but I'm embarrassed, or I feel guilt or shame for the problems that I have. People with significant wealth have different problems than other people, and I just have heard over and over that they they've been told by a psychologist, oh, I wish I had that.